Welcome back to the Hawkins Do You Copy podcast. My name is Lauren.
And my name is Emily, and in this podcast we talk about all things Stranger Things.
In today's episode, it is very exciting because we are going to be talking about some season 4 theories, which pretty much sums up every conversation me and Emily have had the last 3 weeks.
I would say that is pretty fair.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, let's go over the places that you can find us. So you can find us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher at Hawkins Do You Copy. You can find us now on YouTube, where we post the videos every Wednesday at Hawkins Do You Copy. And you can find us on our social media at Hawkins Podcast. So that's Twitter, Facebook. We're around the internet.
And if you listen to us on one place and not on another one, it still does really help us out if you just jump over to the other one and give us a little follow. That would be really good.
We're not going to complain.
No, that would be very good. So, speaking of social media, at the moment, it is really hard as a Stranger Things fan to go on to social media, particularly Instagram.
Yep.
And avoid specific photos of a specific
certain
season. We do just want to say, we follow the hashtag Stranger Things on Instagram. So anything put into that hashtag comes up on our timeline, at which point we see photos of filming.
Yeah. So we're gonna skirt around the topic, but just be aware that the photos are out there.
They're everywhere. They are everywhere. I am someone who has a really interesting relationship with spoilers, and sometimes I'm okay with having just enough that I do want to theorize, but also when you can't fully make sense of it, I don't actively seek it out. But these are everywhere. There's no missing them.
No, I don't think so. I think they're even creeping onto Tumblr at this point.
Yeah.
And yeah, in fairness, I will say it is the same characters that are appearing over and over. So, and it seems to be the same section or the same scene. So I wouldn't say there's too much spoilery right now. The only thing that is stressing me out more than anything is that certain characters don't seem to be there, and I don't know where they are.
No.
That is besides the point. The point is, though, just be aware that it is out there. If you haven't seen anything, I imagine you probably have, but just be aware.
I low-key feel guilty about seeing it, and then I felt better the other day because I had seen that cast members had actually liked the pictures.
Yeah.
So I was if cast members are liking set pictures, surely it's okay.
That's what we'll tell ourselves.
I don't know. But along with these, and also along with a theme that has been really, really prominent in promotion for season 4. So I think it is really important as well to remember that these theories come from the promotion we've already got, which is a fair few bits. We do have a good chunk of information. So because Emily and I,
we're those people.
Yeah, we have come, jumped to a very, very hypothetical theory of season 4, and we sort of hate it but also love it.
So for backstory, I'm not saying we're right, but
we usually are.
Yeah, we did the same thing with season 3, to the point where we predicted Will the Wise walking in dressed as a wizard, in full wizard costume.
As a joke. There is a screenshot of a conversation that we had before there was any promo of season 3, and I think it was me Like, I jokingly said, oh, watch them play D&D in full costume, watch there be like Will in a full wizard costume or something like that. Like, I have to try and find the screenshot. And then there's a conversation a couple of months later of that screenshot, and Emily's put, Lauren, you were right.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was joking. Like, what is going on? We predicted season 3 pretty accurately. Like, scarily correct.
So, will we be right this time? Probably not, because I have no idea. But we have a few things that we think we're picking up on, and it kind of ties in, I guess, with what was going on in season 3. But at the same time, it's hard, because I think one of the big mysteries of season 4, not so much where certain characters are, but more the fact for me, it's the Elle and Will thing, because I think they're the ones we're going to have no idea at all. And I think, to be honest, I don't want to talk into set pictures here, but I have to bring it up. I don't think we're going to see anything from them.
No.
At all. I just have this feeling, I think that's going to be such a closed set.
Yeah.
And they're going to keep that so under wraps. And I think one thing in regards to that's always stuck with me is, I'm talking about Will here, kind of. So my main thing here, I think there's a bigger part for him, and this will tie into something that we're talking about in a second anyway, because the more I think of it, as much as his storyline finishing in season 3, episode 3, it was frustrating, it's also very weird.
Yeah.
And the more I think on that is weird. And the fact he was touching his neck is weird. And it never really went into it. Yeah. And the same then with Elle, that they were together in that season. They still never really interacted. No. There was nothing there. And obviously now with the idea of she's lost her powers, what is going on with him then? Because he still has that connection to the Mind Flayer, which then ties in nicely with how they're going to work then in season 4. Because we kind of had this big thing with the idea of clocks and all of this. Are we literally actually going to have a time travel scenario going on?
The thing here is that we've not just jumped to the clock situation. There is a clock in every bit of promo for season 4 so far. And then the Stranger Writers, and I know that they were just taking the mick when they were doing it. The other day, I assume jokingly, said that episode 3 was called TikTok Mr. Clock, or episode 2 was called TikTok Mr. Clock.
Episode 2, because episode 3 was You Snooze, You Lose, which even then
is a clock. It's still time.
Yeah.
So, time travel.
We have maybe an idea. Because I think we can say this, that I think it's been confirmed that filming in New Mexico is going to take place in November, December. I think it's one of the two. This is actually confirmed. There are articles saying that. I'm not just pictures. So that would obviously be Noah, Millie, and I guess Winona. But we're going to push her aside for a minute because I think she's got an interesting storyline going on, probably in Russia or something like that. So those two aren't filmed until then, which is a massive gap, and especially in the sense of the COVID climate, I guess you could say, would it not make sense to film both at the same time? Or is it a case then of they're not filming because they don't exist?
Yeah. Because time travel.
Yeah. And I know we sound like we're being really over the top here, but kind of a big thing with season 4 has been that it's going back to the beginning and the thing that started at the root of it all, which you could argue, and I think we might have brought this up in one of the other episodes, the idea that it kind of actually started from the moment Elle left the lab and Will was taken.
Yeah.
So are they going to have a thing where they try and stop Will being taken, or they can't rescue him?
Yeah. I reckon they're going to try and go back to the beginning, and it's going to go wrong.
Because obviously we know Back to the Future is a big thing as well. And in Back to the Future, obviously, in number 1, he goes back in time and nearly erases himself from existence.
Yeah.
Because obviously his mum and dad, they never meet, or he needs to get his mum and dad to meet. So are we going to have a similar kind of thing there? Because I think season 3, as we said, kind of like with whatever was going on with Will and now in that it kind of teased the idea of Back to the Future. We all thought it was going to be a bigger theme, and it wasn't, and it was literally one scene towards the end. So is that then going to tie into this as well? And also, in regards to time travel, that end of season 3 is weird.
Yeah.
Like, it jumps around so much that we don't quite know what it is. Because I think it's the moment that Will puts the D&D box in there, Mike goes into the room, Elle walks in, and whatever happens there. But then it jumps to her reading the letter, which then jumps to them being outside and packing and then going, but then jumps right back to that and then goes back to earlier scenes. And it's very disjointed, and you don't quite know what's happening and when it's happening.
No, that one is a lot. And it is confusing, like, to watch that. I mean, I understand it's probably because of, for like dramatic effect and stuff of the scene, but it is an interesting one to see. And again, with influences, obviously Back to the Future is a huge influence, but we've said before that Into the Spider-Verse is an influence. That's alternate dimensions, different things, different versions of each other. And Age of Ultron is, which is where they try and stop a big bad and it goes wrong. For those that have seen Endgame's not a specific influence, but the fact that Marvel is a big influence, Endgame, the whole plot of that is time travel. And I just think the influence on the clocks just doesn't seem, I can't think of another way clocks can play such a big part, especially because a lot of the scenes, the clock is in the upside down.
That's the thing that strikes me, and that could be a dramatic, once again, it could be a dramatic thing.
Or like time is running out.
Yeah, exactly. It could be that kind of thing, that we're running out of time. But also there is a big focus, we're not in Hawkins anymore, which, one, it could just be simply a play on Wizard of Oz. I think that's what everyone jumped to, and obviously the fact that the Byers plus Elle aren't in Hawkins. But also, if you think about Wizard of Oz as a whole, it's arguably an alternative universe, isn't it? Like, it's like a flip on it, where, and then she wakes up, doesn't she? And then I haven't seen Wizard of Oz in a long while, and she wakes up, and then obviously all the characters are there, but different. Like, the Scarecrow isn't a scarecrow, but he's actually someone that works on the farm or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is an alternative universe itself. So maybe.
And also, could it be a literal, we're not in Hawkins anymore because we don't exist?
Yeah.
Like, Will is not in Hawkins anymore because they went back in time and erased him from existence.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that we had spoken about, I think literally in our first episode of this, the idea of like the upside down being an alternative universe.
Yeah.
And that a big theory around that was the idea that Will was literally the mind flayer. And because of that, it's like alternative universe, with one, he was kept there when he was rescued, one, he was taken and they got him back. And the two have the same whole. So for the mind flayer to exist, it kind of had to like perpetuate itself.
Yeah.
And that you needed that cycle to continue. So the Will Byers fan in me is like, are we finally going to get the storyline he deserves? And it's going to be right. And this is actually part of the cycle.
Yeah.
Or are they dead?
Maybe they are. It also depends on the type of time travel that they're going to go for, because there are many like different ways of time travel that can be theorized. So there's the theory that you time travel back, and then whatever you do in that time doesn't change what's already happened because it's already happened, but it creates another timeline. So I could go back in time to like 2010, stop myself meeting someone, for example, but it doesn't mean that in this timeline that I'm in now I didn't meet them. It just means I created another timeline in which I didn't meet them. There's also you go back, you change one thing, and everything that's then happened gets erased because you stopped that.
Dark is actually a really good example of that. I won't go into it too much because I literally don't know what I can say without spoiling the entire thing. But if you've seen Dark, it kind of follows that track.
Yeah.
And that's what I'll say.
There's also the concept of time travel in, can you time travel back to a time when time travel didn't exist? So if I invented time travel today, people 50 years in the future wouldn't be able to time travel back past today because before today time travel didn't exist. Or are you able to do that? In which case, if time travel is a theory in season 4, did it exist while everything was going on and we just didn't know about it, and now they are aware that time travel is a thing, so they try and go back?
Time travel is really tricky.
It is.
And I hope, if that is what they're going to do, I hope they do it right.
Time travel has to be done right, otherwise it just becomes ridiculous.
Yeah. One way I think they can do it is if they use it that the upside down literally is kind of a way to do it, and with the gates and all of that, which then gets awkward because we know that the gates are currently closed, apart from in Russia.
But they took the gate, technically, like transported Hopper to Russia, I'm gonna say, because we didn't see anyone take him out, so I'm gonna assume that the explosion that happened literally transported him to another version of that, but in Russia. So I'm wondering that. I'm wondering if that's sort of like they try and are fixing that, but then they make the situation worse. And
unless there is literally more to the touching the neck than we think there is, because it's kind of a connection to the mind flayer. Like, we know that is the mind flayer. Is that going to be explored in some kind of sense then with that? Because the mind flayer, we're presuming he can open portals and do whatever with that, and do like astral projection. I'm not saying that we're going to have literal Will the Wise astral projection, but you know what I mean. I wonder if there's something with that. And also, actually, on that topic, Will the Wise as a name, it's, I don't know.
No,
maybe
but
I'm just having it. You know what I mean?
No, it sounds like a thing. Like, it sounds like something of importance, you know?
Yeah. That's the only thing I can think of how they can do that again in Hawkins, because obviously we know it's in Russia. Because I don't think, I don't know, I'm going to presume that everything is closed. It's tricky.
There's also blood on one of the clocks that's in the tree in the Upside Down, and people have been theorizing online if that's something to do with like Alice in Wonderland and falling into a different place.
That is a point, that like Alice this was a post we saw on Instagram actually, where someone came up with this. If I can re-find the post and who said it, we'll link it. And it was the idea that obviously Alice in Wonderland is falling, as you said, like falling into this different place, falling into a tunnel, I guess you could say.
No, but genuinely, that's what she falls down. She falls down, and it is kind of like, because she's falling downward, it is kind of like an upside down version of where she is.
Everything's better in some sense, but also at the same time something is off, and it's very different. And obviously you've got all manner of things going on in Wonderland, you can say that. So it does make you wonder if it does make you wonder then if that is, because it's not an influence, which is interesting.
No,
No,
it's not, and I found that interesting. But neither is the Wizard of Oz, right?
it is. Wizard of Oz
It is. Wizard of
it's,
Oz
it's
is
like,
okay.
yeah, it's like a tiny little part, but it is.
That is really interesting.
Mm.
You'd think Alice in Wonderland was pretty.
Yeah, pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But what else is interesting, actually, and this is literally just coming to my head, and I'm trying not to be influenced by step photos, but I did see a post as well saying what has been released is very Ferris Bueller looking.
Yeah.
And Ferris Bueller is an influence. And if you think about Ferris Bueller as a concept, really it's not about time travel, but it is about time, isn't it? And being in the right places at the right time so they don't get caught by someone, and literally making the most of a day and being back in time.
Yeah.
So obviously, as I said, Ferris Bueller isn't time traveling, but that kind of time theme
It is a
carrying
theme
through. And actually, even if I think about it, a Goofy movie kind of has that same kind of theme as well, that he needs to get somewhere to be in time to do the power. There's spoilers for the Goofy movie, but who cares? So obviously he needs to get to the Powerline concert because he's told his girlfriend, or somebody wants to be his girlfriend, that he's going to be performing with him live on stage, and it's all about getting there and getting there in time. So that theme is running through. So is it going to be a case of they literally need to get somewhere in time then, or are they time traveling? Who knows?
No, and I do wonder that. I do wonder, and I'm thinking, like, who is the one that does it?
So obviously we don't want to get into the stuff that is being shown online, but let me take it back to season 3 when you have that scene, there it's not my fault you don't like girls scene. This will have a point. Roll with it.
I think I know what.
So that scene was done in multiple ways and had very different variations. So, for example, the one obviously we used was "It's not my fault you don't like girls." There was also "It's not my fault that you don't like girls yet," and things like that. And the one they all meant for was that,
which is very interesting, but that's not this discussion.
No, we're not talking about that right now. But we watch another podcast where we've spoken all about that.
Yes.
So that kind of also then sets up the idea then of, are parallel versions of things going to happen within the show? And that is all I will say.
Nice save.
Thank you.
I love it. But that is interesting. Like, it's like we said last week, it would be wild if back in 2015 when they filmed season 1, they'd filmed the ending of season 5 and have been sat on it this whole time. You know, like, you wonder if different bits are being shot at different times to then be used as flashbacks, because I guess when you're working with children, they grow so easily, you know, like most of the kids now are actually adults. You know, by the time season 4's done, 4 out of the 6 party members will be adults.
Yeah, I think Noah will be close, but I don't think he'll quite, presuming they get season 5 done quick.
Yeah,
I think he'll be the only one that isn't
which
18.
Which I think, so you when you know you're filming with people that are growing like quickly, you probably do yourself a favor by filming different bits of things in case that needs to be used later. And I'm interested, and then if that is the case, who is the person that's coming up with the concept of time travel? You know, like, could it be Max, who wants to try and save Billy? Could it be Mike, who wants the buyers to have never left, so he doesn't want things to have happened in the first place, so that Joyce doesn't deal with everything and then doesn't feel like they have to leave, but then he would still want to save Elle, so that makes the situation really tricky, you know. So who is it that's thinking, let's, if time travel is a situation, who is it that's coming up with the concept to do that?
See, part of me really wants to hang on to my Mike Wheeler has more going on than we think thing, because he is very central to all the characters within the show. You think he has it at this point. Obviously I know that Dustin and all of that also have now connection to it, but he has this real connection to both wherever the buyers are and Hawkins at the same time. And if we go back to that last scene in season 3 as well, the text that overlays is very poignant. So I think there's one shot, I can't remember the exact line, it's when Hopper's letter's being read out. He looks back at the buyer's house at the exact moment the line says, "I don't want things to change," and then it then cuts to a scene of Will like and doing whatever in the car, in tears. Does it say something like, "I want to go back to how things were," or does it still on Mike at that point? It's one of the two. It's on at that point. There's a big switch between, he's saying it might be back on Mike when he's looking at them all driving away, them saying, "I want things to go back to how things were." So that makes me think there is more going on there, because we it was very reminiscent of season 1, that last scene, actually.
I felt
in a sense. So like when he hugs his mum, which we know is kind of a callback to both moments in season 1, when he thinks Will's dead, and then when he thinks Elle's dead, which is a whole different analysis in itself, like how they parallel. But
I'm also wondering if it's not, so this makes sense. So I'm wondering if, one, there's been leftover things in Hawkins from the lab and this whole situation, so they start to notice weird things happen in time. So they have to work to fix it. Maybe someone forgets who the other person is, or so, things like that. Or we also had the theory that Mike is the mind flayer and has been like taken over and possessed, and maybe he's so central because he's actually actively doing these things.
So
I told you, our brains went wild. Like, our brains went absolutely wild. I've also come to the conclusion that even though I make my Utah High School Musical jokes, I do just want to say it on the podcast here, that I think that they are in Illinois by Murray.
That's what we've now come to, that conclusion, that it is Illinois.
Not actually for any reason. Like, that's not even because of set pictures or anything. We've just been talking a lot about that, and about the phone call at the end of season 3. And we were thinking Joyce would want to be by Murray.
And also, if we then think about Mike's conversation with Elle in season 3, then about, "You're going to come here for," or he even said, "I'm going to come here, come to you, or you're going to come to me." It's got to be somewhere that's far enough that you'd have to stay probably a little while, but not too far that you would have to make a week of it.
Like
Illinois, if we're trusting Google Maps, because obviously we don't know, it's a big place, but in general speaking, it was around 3-4 hours, something like that.
Whereas Indiana to Utah was something like 45 or something ridiculous like that.
The Mrs. Wheeler is not going to be doing a 45-minute road trip. 45-hour road trip.
45-hour road trip. No, you'd have to fly. But I don't know, Mike seems to be a focus.
I really want him to be a focus. I think it's, as much as I talk about Will Byers, Mike Wheeler was my fave throughout season 1 and season 2, and I had high hopes from season 3, and then he did that. But no, he is one of my favorites. As much as I joke about him and will moan about his actions, he is a favorite, and I think it's what he deserves, a storyline outside of being a love interest.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people complained about season 2, about how he was essentially doing what he did with Elle, but I didn't notice that. That was the thing. I
No.
noticed like a character coming through there, and that was Mike, I think, until literally the very last moment
Yeah.
when Elle came back, that we did see Mike. And I think his actions there show what a character he could be. And I think he now just needs that push outside of that. And I know that technically, if we go with it, he has been the big bad all this time, but realizing it kind of then brings him back to Elle and Will. But then that also makes sense why he's so central to those two characters.
Imagine if he is possessed
and just hadn't had a clue.
No.
Yeah. And it sounds like we're taking this out of nowhere, but one big thing for me, and I think I said before, this is the personal headcanon, the idea that Mike accidentally gave the Mind Flayer the idea of spying, because that conversation is very interesting, actually. It's the one when Will and Mike are sitting on the bed and they're having a conversation, he's handshaking and Will is not having a good time. No, and he says about, well, maybe you can be a super spy. And Will then obviously does he have hesitation, or is it the Mind Flayer then talking about? We don't quite know at that point. Because he says, well, what if he spies back? And it's like, we won't let him. And then I have to bring up the shot, sorry, where they look at the camera. This is not related to that theory at all. When they look at the camera and it's actually like the person, I find that so interesting.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's one of my favorite shots. And it's like, it literally only for a second until they pull the focus away, but when they just look directly at you, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, but then obviously we know then in the hospital, he then figures it out, and it's like the person to go like, the spy.
Yeah.
And does it that way, which I don't know. It might be a reach, but I always remember that moment. And he also seems to know a lot.
I wonder if at the end of
season
2, when it like the Mind Flayer like goes out of Will, bits of it like stayed.
Because he did,
and
there
went
was a
into
theory, actually, when they get sprayed in the face by it, and there was a big thing about what did that mean, because it never actually really got addressed.
No, it was just kind of like left. You know.
And obviously Mike does fall over, and like the tunnels try and get him as well and try and pull him in that way.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. It could be a reach, or it could be something, but I just think like what we talked about last time as well with the D&D campaigns matching up exactly with how it's going to go down.
The Duffers don't. I feel like from season 2, they haven't done things like accidentally.
No.
There's been a couple of things like the fact that they didn't think about the fact that the buyers had a dog, and then in season 2 they just didn't have a dog, and things like that. But they're very specific in what they tell, and I just wonder if, even though this has all been destroyed and these things have happened, that there's just remnants of the Upside Down, of this alternate place, of this place you can travel to, and this time travel situation has been left in all of them.
Well, we know that can be a thing, because I know Will was literally possessed, but as far as we knew, it was all removed from him, yet still he was having that connection as if he was still possessed by having like the goosebumps on the neck and everything like that. So we know that it can do that.
Yeah, and I wonder if that is going to continue with the buyers and them out of Hawkins. And maybe he can feel, maybe he has got some kind of powers, and he can sort of feel when something's going wrong in Hawkins, you know? I'd love for him to have some kind of powers, but that he doesn't know he's got them, and then they start to slowly develop. Because it would be interesting if he can feel what's happening like in Hawkins. but he doesn't know that that's what he's feeling. He doesn't know that he can feel things happen in Hawkins, but that is what he's feeling.
Which actually is really interesting thing itself. If I'm more, I know that I'm now going back to season 3, but that whole thing, actually, the more I think about it, is very interesting that he kind of knew it was the mind flayer. Like, it could have just, like, he knew, and he kind of knew something was around, even by the way he was looking. And also, he doesn't tell Mike first.
No.
He doesn't tell him when they're in the cinema.
No. I definitely do think that there is some kind of time travel situation going on, like, or some kind of time playing a part. The fact that there's such an influence on clocks, and I just wonder if it is this kind of, we're going to try and stop something from happening, but actually we mess the whole thing up.
I think that's where the Will L parallels are going to play into it.
Yeah.
Because there are, and I've said this before, there are too many for it to be a coincidence.
Yeah.
Even with Sarah, Hopper's daughter who died, there are links there as well. That there is too much. Like, the same shots, they run side by side, and they look exactly the same, to the point where it was something I saw on Tumblr. It was like a gift set, which I'm definitely not gonna be able to find, because I think it was like season 2 time. But of them essentially like waking up at the same time.
I know exactly what
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's where it's the shot when Will is, it's Halloween, that one where he's laying down and gets up, and then Elle gets up at the same time, and there's moments like that you just think, this isn't coincidence. There is a link between them,
and they're going to be spending so much time together, like so much time together at like in such close proximity, and they haven't done that before.
No, think about in season 1, if we take the comics out of the equation, because I don't know how much we can count them as canon anyway, but let's take them out of it. She knew exactly who he was, and when he saw her in the Upside Down, when he's in Castle Byers, he wasn't surprised.
No,
not at all. So there is something.
What if they are a version of each other?
See, I would kind of love that. And that has been something that I remember was flown around, that if we thought of the whole thing as a D&D campaign, there was a big theory that Elle is Will's character.
Yeah.
And he's kind of, because the big thing in the show Bible as well was that Will and Mike live out fantasies through D&D.
Yeah.
And maybe Elle is the person that Will was like, I want to be like you. You're stronger. You have these powers. You're wise. Elle's wise. You know what I mean? That kind of thing, that there's that link there. And I don't know, Mike screwed himself as a supervillain. You know what I mean? Though, just like it does make you wonder, what is at play here?
It does. It's interesting the way that they've done the sets as well. It's interesting that some characters are there, some characters aren't yet. Could be because of COVID, could be because of other conflicting schedules, because of obviously things have to be halted. Definitely could be that. But like, some characters aren't on set yet.
No. As far as we know.
And they're not gonna be for a little while, as far as we know.
No, because even looking at social media as well, so for example, Cara, so Mrs. Wheeler, she seems to be on holiday all the time, which is interesting, because the Wheelers obviously play this such big part, and as far as we know, the Wheelers don't seem to be
in Hawkins right now. No.
Which could be that they could be with the Byers, it could be that, but it seems like wouldn't it be time for them to be at school?
Yeah.
So why are they with the Byers?
Yeah. I don't know. It is a bit weird. There's there was just a couple more things we had as well, that in the season 4 like trailer, there's a bike in the Upside Down and it's like overgrown.
We could say, well, full disclosure, it could be vines, but it also looks like a bike.
Oh yes, yeah. It does look like a bike. And we're wondering if like that's that Will like wasn't saved. And he's still in there. There was also another theory that we jumped to the conclusion of, and this is kind of because like if anyone's read the Shadowhunter books, this is kind of something similar I got from those. At the end of Queen of Air and Darkness, you'll know what I mean. I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't. But what if like replacement party members came from the Upside Down? So what if like Mike isn't Mike, but his alternate version is now in Hawkins, and the Mike we know is in the Upside Down, or Dustin or Luke, vice, you know.
Which you could argue is something that was kind of got into in season 3, because it could have just been the Mind Flayer projecting and creating essentially this army before he took over Billy, but we did see people there, and I'm presuming they weren't all taken, because wasn't it up to Billy to literally convert the masses, so to speak? So we know that it is possible with the thing because we've seen it happen. So maybe
that would be wild if it turned out that it was like this alternate version, like dimension version of themselves. Basically, we just think time is a big part of this show.
Could you tell? I don't know if you could.
I don't know, it just seems very interesting, and the fact that in season 3 Back to the Future was mentioned and it wasn't focused on, but it was mentioned enough to be suspicious. You know, who knows? We've just come up with a bunch of theories that are a bit wild.
I don't know if we're going to be right about season 4, I'm not going to lie.
No, I mean, but we were really right about season 3, and who could have actually predicted that Will would have been dressed in a wizard costume? Not me.
That is a point.
I'd say not me. I did. I literally did.
Yeah. And I will say, a couple of years ago or last year, there is photographic evidence. And by photographic evidence, I mean a screenshot of me saying, what if season 4 was just an AU?
Yeah. Just a whole AU season.
Yep.
That would be insane.
Yeah. I wouldn't complain, but also I kind of want to see the buyers.
Yeah. It would be interesting. It's definitely an interesting season, I think. I think this season stuff's gonna go down. You know, like we've had this thing of a couple of episodes are all right, and then this big bad happens. They think the big bad's gone, and then this big bad happens. You know, that was season 2 and season 3. But now, you know, the Duffers have said publicly, we want to get out of Hawkins. You know, it's time to get out of Hawkins. It's time to, you know, try something else, because how many times can this happen in Hawkins? And this whole thing about going back to the beginning and, you know, like starting again as something we've known this whole time. And you think there's just a whole focus on time and starting again and other things. And I just can't help but think that the time travel or alternate dimension, alternate universe theories have to play a part with this. Whether or not specifically we're right in some of the things we've said, I will be amazed if they're not a part at all.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I don't know if I'm always mixed on time travel. I'm always mixed.
If it's done well, I like it.
Yeah, exactly. I really liked just to bring up Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, I liked how it was done there, because it was throughout the series, it was throughout that whole book really, that the way it was written and the way it was done. So like with spoilers, Buckbeak was killed. The reader actually never saw that happen.
No.
And that was seen in the film as well, that you were taken away from that shot, you never saw that happen. All you saw was the person with the axe, the executor, yeah, executioner, that's it, coming down on what we presume was a neck, but actually it was a pumpkin. And then obviously the rock coming through the window, and then that hitting them, but we're not seeing where it came from. So there were hints throughout.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting if that is the route they go down then in season 4. Will it be a case we can then look back on season 1, 2, and 3 and be like, I knew that was caused by that, or I knew that felt off. So that's something I think will be interesting, because I think, it will make rewatches very interesting, and I kind of now want to rewatch and analyze every single moment.
Analyze every moment. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do some like couple of months of bonus weekly episodes or something where we're rewatching each episode leading up to season 4. But no, I read a book recently called The Psychology of Time Travel, and time travel was done really well in that. It was a fiction book. But then in Endgame, time travel was a bit weird. And it wasn't my absolute favourite. But we don't need to talk about Endgame right now, because we never need to talk about Endgame. But yeah, I think if they do it well, it'll be really good. If not,
see you at season 5.
That's a future us problem.
Exactly.
There we go.
Don't need to worry about that yet.
No. So our question of the week is, what is some of your most hypothetical out there theories for the future of Stranger Things?
They can't be more out there than Mike is the mind flayer all along. So just send us stuff. Yeah,
just anything. Any theories, that would be wonderful.
In the meantime, you can once again catch us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher at Hawkins Do You Copy. You can catch us on our social medias at Hawkins Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr at Hawkins Do You Copy.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for listening to episode 16 of the Hawkins Do You Copy podcast. Over and out.
Hawkins, do you copy?